Have you ever wanted the wisdom of a Jedi? Isn't it amazing how Yoda can go off and meditate for a while and come back with a solution to a problem? Seems like magic. Like they're tapping into the Force in a way that we, in our world, never really can, or can we? See, we've gotten lost in the weeds of meditation over the last couple decades and have lost a skill that we used to have. It's one that's actually been preserved within the Druidry tradition, and that is proper contemplation, how to chew over a problem through deep meditation and thought and find solutions. And so we're going to be talking today about deep meditation, contemplation, as we walk together down Creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christopagan Druid and priest of bridging.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christopagan Druid and sous chef to the Dogma.
Today, we are going to be talking about deep meditation. We're going to be talking about contemplation, about how to use the power of meditation to actually help you find solutions to your problems. I know it sounds crazy, right? Now, there are going to be some caveats and some warnings before we get into this too deeply. But before we start all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on whatever app you're listening to this on. We do 5 original Christopagan and Druid episodes Monday through Friday, and you don't want to miss a thing because we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up. All right, let's just get into it, shall we? To be able to commune with the living force and find an answer. Isn't that kind of the dream? I think a lot of people get into meditation for that because they see that in a lot of movies, not just the Star Wars movies, but a lot of shows where they showed the monk meditating and then suddenly knowing what the right answer is. It's magical, isn't it? I think it's something a lot of us long for. And the problem is our methods of meditation that we practice mostly nowadays are heavily influenced by Buddhist meditation. And that's not a bad thing. Mindfulness meditation, great. I practiced Buddhism for quite some time, and there are lots of forms of meditation that I absolutely love, wholeheartedly endorse. This is not a takedown on Buddhist meditation. But Buddhist meditation, whether it's mindfulness meditation, dhyana meditation, dzogchen meditation, tonglen, any of that, what you're working towards doing is realizing your own Buddha mind and removing the distractions that keep you from realizing the true nature of reality. They are a more or less negative form of meditation where you're learning to let go, to strip down, to deconstruct, to take apart. In some, you are building up a little bit, sometimes through visualization or something like that, but they're not. None of the forms of meditation that are often taught in the West are there to help you mull over a problem. Again, not a bad thing. Those tools are great for what they're used for. And remember, on this channel, we always talk about spiritual practices in terms of spiritual technology. Sometimes you need a drill. Sometimes you need a hammer. Sometimes you need an awl. These are not the same tool. And that's why you need to have many tools in your tool belt that will help you to accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to do. And this kind of deep contemplative meditation is one of those tools that unfortunately really isn't taught that much in the modern world.
Okay, so to get a little geeky Star Wars for a moment, it really makes me think of Master Torben in The Acolyte. Here you have a Jedi Master who is very, very good at meditation to the point where he could float in the air and create a force bubble around himself that weapons couldn't even enter that bubble. If only he was really good at deep meditation, because deep meditation would have allowed him to contemplate the things that he was actually supposed to be contemplating. That was his feelings of regret, his emotional attachments to the events that happened so long ago when he was a young Padawan, and the weird experiences that he had that apparently has been haunting him ever since. This is where you can really see in the Star Wars setting this difference between deep meditation and these other forms of meditation. And I just thought it was really cool how in The Acolyte, they really show this.
I'm going to ignore the books and the comics for a minute, but the only characters we really see doing this in the movies, we see Obi-Wan, we see Qui-Gon Jinn, we see Yoda. I would say for a couple moments there in the original trilogy, we do see Luke tiptoeing around this, but we never really see Luke do this. We see him guide Rey through this process, and Rey messing it up and him turning it into a joke to try to snap her out of it, leading me to believe that he did eventually learn this technique.
Yeah, but he definitely struggled with it, and it can struggle with it and fail.
Yes.
Where instead of going into deep meditation, he wanders into the future and gets obsessed with future events rather than the deep meditation that he was supposed to be doing. Because you even see Yoda warning him about how motion the future is.
Like he does with Luke as well. That's really the biggest caveat with this kind of meditation technique is it's very easy to do one of two things and have it go completely awry. One is to create a loop around yourself where all you are doing is aiding and supporting your preconceived notions. That's bad. That's very bad. You don't want to do that. The other way that this becomes problematic is we loop our fears and anxieties into it, and we are preparing for predictable moments and get ourselves into a fear spiral. And we see both Luke and Anakin do this in the Star Wars movie. Now, the only way to really guard against this is one, having a good journal where you can start noticing this happening. You knew the journal was coming up. Okay. That's how I know who's been with this for a while is, oh, there's the mention of the journal. Or having somebody that you can talk through these experiences with who is able and willing to point out when you are relying too much on unverified personal knowledge. And notice I said knowledge, not gnosis, because this isn't just, I think the God said or a spirit said to me. It can also just be, I think that this thing is bad or this thing is good. And we can reason ourselves into anything.
Yeah, it's like when we talk about the frequency illusion, these things our brains can do, and we just have to be aware. That's where that journaling can help, and having a second set of eyes look over.
It's also where we allow ourselves to bias ourselves, and we are self-selecting for things that confirm our bias. So we need to always, in any thought process, be very mindful of any of those things, because the greatest flaw in our modern society is this idea that if an idea is reasonable or logical, it must be true. And truth and valid are not the same thing. You can come to a valid logical proposition that is not true, because truth means that you're testing it against the outside world. There's a lot of math experiments that have been done over the years that came up with very interesting numbers that have not checked out in actual reality. There's a lot of ways to reason yourself into things that aren't actually real. So you just need to be mindful and very careful that you're not walking yourselves into a corner. And if you do this process properly, there are kind of safeguards that are built into it to keep you from chasing the white rabbit. But then again, I'm mixing in some Alice in Wonderland, and this is supposed to be about Star Wars.
It's an important thing to be mindful of, because it's easy to end up chasing the white rabbit.
Yes, in Star Wars, we'd say don't chase the white Chuka cat, because Ezra does it in Rebels. It's a thing. Anyway, so how do you actually do this practice? It's going to start like all of our meditations do, with some deep breathing and settling into our body. Breathing in and out, slowly and deliberately, until we just feel settled into our body. Now, if you are already practiced in mindfulness meditation, you should do a moment of that to clear your mind. Now, notice I haven't told you what you're going to think about yet. I think you can use this process to discover a lot of insight about yourself. So you may have a question coming in. You may not have a question coming in. Having a question actually doesn't matter for this type of meditation. Thoughts will arise and we will start to learn things, but it's a kind of a reasoning that we're going into. You need a clean slate. We need to clear the rivers of our mind. We need to wipe everything clean. So if you're not used to mindfulness meditation, here's where you want to focus on your breath. Every time you breathe in, count 1, breathe out, count 2, breathe in, count 3, breathe out, count 4. Every odd number you breathe in, every even number you breathe out, up to the count of 10. And then the next one, we start again at 1. We're clearing our mind. We're bringing ourselves back to a stable place to begin. And you practice this mindfulness meditation till you get to a place where you feel that you are on firm ground. Now, you either state your question or you open up. You're going to open up either way. But if you have a question, this is where you do that. By open up, I mean you let yourself breathe naturally and you stop counting the breaths. If you have a question, now you state it. If you don't, you start watching and seeing what percolates up. What is arising in your mind? What are the thoughts that are rising up? Now, here's the hard part. We're not going to chase after any of these thoughts, but we are going to start collecting. So as you're sitting there in this open space, if you notice your mind start wandering or racing, we do our mindfulness meditation and pull ourselves back to our breath and then let go again. We're always wanting to stay in the spacious, open, mindful. Maybe the thought arises, I should change the layout of the living room, as an example. We didn't come into this with a question. Now we look at our response to it. Was it a positive response, a negative response? And we're just noting at this point. We're not cataloging, we're not analyzing, we're just noting. If you have a positive response and think, well, maybe I should rearrange the furniture in the living room, we now restate this as a question. How should I rearrange the living room? And we enter back into that open, spacious place and we see what arises. If you are prone to visualization, you might start having glimpses of the chairs and couches in a different place. Maybe moving the entertainment center somewhere else. You might start having images. You might start having task lists start going through your mind. Things will start arising. If they are off topic, we simply restate the question again. And now we're using the question to keep our mind focused. It's our new point of focus. So how should I rearrange the living room? How might I rearrange the living room? And notice the change I just did there. Maybe the question isn't worded exactly right. So if nothing is arising, maybe we tweak the wording and we just sit with it. We're not projecting. We're not allowing ourselves the input here. We're not pushing our agenda onto this. We're waiting to see what floats up. Maybe you see the television in a place that you're like, oh, that looks like an interesting place. Well, that becomes our new focus. If I move my TV here, that's where the couch is. Where does the couch go? So now we have our new question. Where does the couch go? And we just follow this path. See, we're building the path. We're not getting pulled. We're not just going off into fantasy or daydream. We're letting things arise and fall. And when we find something that sparks our interest or curiosity, we're taking it, pulling it in, rephrasing it as the new question, the new point of focus, and staying in this open space to see what arises. And then you rinse and repeat. Once you feel that you have either done this long enough where you have a satisfactory answer, or if you set a timer going into this, your timer goes off. We take some deep breaths to return to our body. And then quickly, we write down and journal the experience that we just had. Now, Brian, I'm going to ask you a very simple and easy question. Have you now heard the voice of God telling you exactly how you should reorganize the living room?
Mm-hmm.
What have you done?
I had deep contemplation on the possible arrangements of the living room.
And now we bring in our analytical processes. You may have seen the entertainment center going to a place where we can't put it there. It's going to block off the vents. I didn't think about the vents. Oh, I didn't realize in that moment the cords won't reach. I'm going to have to have cords sprawling all over the room for this. I'm just using the living room example because it's the example that I chose to use. Anything that you're contemplating, then this is where we bring in the analytics. All of those thoughts of how does this work logistically? We start bringing that in here. This form of meditation is essentially unconscious brainstorming, where we're just letting things arise and we're seeing where we get taken from step to step. Depending on the question, maybe the question is a vague, what should I do today? Maybe you have a day with nothing planned and you don't know what you want to do. And so we're going to go into a meditative state and we're going to see what might be my heart's desire. What do I really want to do today? I have nothing that I really want to do. It's going to take you down this path. And maybe in the moment of meditation, you have a very specific answer. And then logistically, you're like, I can't afford to go there. Or, oh, that's going to be too far away. I can't travel that far. And now we hone it into a more practical, useful answer.
I've done this with cooking. I'll have some ingredients and then I'll go into deep meditation on how they should be combined together, how flavors would interact, what I allow open ideas and room for other flavors and thoughts and directions and preparation methods and techniques.
The important thing is you don't cook while you're doing this. This is all just
Mhm.
ideation, because and it's important to understand this, the answers you pull from this can be wrong or maybe impractical. The whole point of this is to try to get to a deeper, different answer than what you're expecting, than what you would get if you just sat down and brainstormed. This is also a place where if you're more intuitive and you deal with other energies and spirits, you can bring those in at this point. What would my great grandmother cook with these ingredients? I have a sermon I need to write. How would my great grandfather write this sermon? You can start bringing in those ancestral spirits, those ancestral energies. And whether it's your memory of them answering the question or them actually helping to inspire an answer, moot point. The point is we're now bringing these other energies in and allowing them to have input and say.
The number of times I've gone, okay, doctor, we need to make a dish that's going to be amazing for the guest's experience. And craziness has come out of it, or a menu for an evening.
This might seem very simple to a lot of people. And to some people, when you first explain to them, they're like, why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I just do a web or any of the other ideation methods that I used to? One, this method, we've used some more or less frivolous examples of how to use it. Again, very practical ones that you might actually use in your day-to-day life of these are the ingredients. What food could I make, right? Or how do I rearrange a part of my house? But if you're thinking about going to college, this is a good meditation technique to get down into your bones and find out what is it that you really want to learn? What is it you really want to do? Because we're not allowing any of those outside distractions to come in. And if we are, we're noting them. If what should I study? And you clearly hear your mother's voice say the law, what we're noting is my mother says I should be a lawyer. You're not thinking I should be a lawyer. Maybe you have an interest there and you follow that further. Maybe while you have that voice in your head of your mother saying you should study the law, you have this other deep-seated thing that says, I'm really interested in helping people. And maybe that's guiding you towards being a social worker or a doctor. We're trying to get into this intuitive space where we are allowing an emergent process for wisdom to arise. And again, like with all practices that you do, all spiritual practices, we're not saying, I found the answer, the spirits have spoken, so I shall do fill in the blank. No, we test all things and hold to that which is true. So once you finish this process, now your analytical mind comes in and you break it down and you go, is this realistic? Is this really what I want? Is this something we have the tools and the capability to do? Did I accidentally come up with a long-term goal and I now need to figure out how to break that down into short-term goals that are more achievable on the way to that thing?
Did I figure out a recipe how to make flourless chocolate cake, but unfortunately involves 4 different complex baking techniques in one recipe? Oh yeah. I did this once with that. I wanted to come up with a good flourless chocolate cake because that's the trick where it doesn't come out like a brownie or fudge, or it's supposed to be cake. So I want it to be like cake. So I sat down with 7 distinctly different recipes involving different techniques and stuff. And I sat down with them with that question and did a deep meditation on it, and was able to, through the process of the meditation, I could actually see all these different techniques going into it, its evolution, the intentions of all the different chefs that were behind these recipes, and how through decades of cooking, how they had changed and evolved. I was able to behold all of it and then see how it all came back together. And came out with something that, when done, it is like chocolate cake, but has absolutely no flour in it. Its execution is actually really complex. And most chefs that I've shared it with just shook their heads and went, nah.
This form of contemplation is a very good way to work over a thought in your head. My great grandfather used to call this mulling. What you doing, Poppy? Mulling. And it wasn't just rolling an idea around in your head. It was sitting with the question. And that's something we don't like doing in our modern society. We want those very quick, easy answers, but we lose a lot of insight and we lose a lot of wisdom when we don't allow for time to allow the answer to emerge on its own.
And space.
Because
that's a moment where you're creating space for, and that inspiration to fill and to be in.
And many times at the end of this process, what you've done is refined the question for the next session. and not actually found the answer you were looking for. And that is a success, by the way. The whole point of this process is to find wisdom, to find the answer you're actually looking for and not what is good enough, which also means that this technique is not suitable for all things. But what do we always say about practice? We are practicing to develop a skill. The more we practice this kind of meditation, the more we develop this ability to both trust our gut, which is a thing we really like to do in our modern world, through this refinement of seeing when our gut is right and when it is wrong, and how to differentiate between the two. And we get the ability to do this a bit more spontaneously in the moment, where we don't have to take time to go into a special quiet place and do the full meditation. We can bring this skill with us into our regular daily life. And I've noticed that a lot of people that I work with tend to think that I'm really smart or creative, or I've heard a lot of words thrown at me. I get really offended by it because I know that they're attributing it to an innate quality of mine, when no, this is what 30 years of practice gets you. I have honed skills. Anybody can hone these skills. It's never too late to start honing these skills. They're just skills. There's nothing special about me or anybody else who does this. We just put in the work. It's like a carpenter. I can look at somebody who can sculpt amazing things out of wood and make phenomenal things in a short amount of time. I could probably do similar things if I put in those decades of work to hone those skills myself. But I didn't, so I can't. So kudos to all the people that put in the effort to learn the skills. But that's what this is. This is a skill. All practice is teaching us a skill. And it really will help you when you have to deal with things in your life, because when an event pops up and you realize, I don't know what to do about this, it helps us to develop the faith that we have this untapped reservoir of wisdom that we can tap into. So when you don't know what to do, you can enter this mindful state, pause at the question, and watch what arises and try and work out something to do. It keeps us from getting trapped in that frozen place where we don't have the answer right now. Now, the quality of the answers that rise up will be proportional to our understanding of the topic. Always bear that in mind. You're not going to get a 5-star recipe necessarily arise if you're not studying cooking and the culinary arts and all the recipes of all these great chefs. You still have to put the work in. Unfortunately for all of us, the Sartora practices did not happen. You cannot summon a spirit to teach you while you're sleeping. That we only have access in our brains to the knowledge we had going in, because anything else that a spirit tried to tell us, we don't have the frameworks for it.
That's the thing. Like, let's just say a spirit got the cooking thing, so you have no knowledge of what a mustard seed is. And if a spirit comes along and has this wonderful recipe involving mustard seeds, it's going to say blah, blah, blah in it. That's all you're going to hear, blah, blah, blah. It goes back to your personal internal translation engine and how good or insufficient it is.
I know that this is a Star Wars episode and we're just talking about Star Wars, but I'm a big sci-fi fan, so I have to bring up the other star, the Star Trek, because there's a wonderful episode of Star Trek Voyager where they're trapped in this anomaly, because they got trapped in anomalies a lot on that show. And the aliens are literally rewriting Chakotay's mind so that he can understand how to get them out. And everybody around him thinks he's going crazy. He thinks he's going crazy, but he doesn't have the vocabulary or the understanding to do what needs to be done. And so they literally have to rewrite his brain. And by the time that idea starts percolating up, which he experiences all through a boxing metaphor, because that's something that he knows well, he starts saying words that nobody knows what they mean, because he's basically inventing language to cover the terms for the things he needs to know how to do. Yeah, we don't want to have that experience. That's what it would take for a spirit to teach us something we have no framework for understanding. They'd literally have to break and reform our brain. And that's a level of violence none of us want to experience. So do understand, this is a garbage in, garbage out process. If you're trying to do this with your health, for example, and you do not have a good knowledge of actual human anatomy and human nutrition and medicine, the answers that...
Even if they told you something helpful that was specific, if you don't have the language to translate that, all you heard was blah, blah, blah. You might as well be Zoidberg at this point.
I think that's important to understand. Everything that we are going to pull from this process is going to be rooted in the frameworks we already have. What's brilliant about this process is we are opening space for new frameworks to emerge from the knowledge that we already have. And that's where insight can happen and things can be special, because we suddenly realized, like I did a little while ago, oh, what if A and B are the same thing? Wait a minute. And then started doing research, and oh, it looks like A and B are different words for the same thing. What that would mean, because I was in this open space and my brain was able to go, wait a minute, the definition we have for this thing and the definition we have for this thing are very similar. What if? Are these the same picture? Is this the same thing? And that thought would not have arisen just through thinking through things, because they were put in different baskets in different parts of my brain. That's what we're allowing to happen here. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I talked up the practice, then talked down the practice, then I'm talking up to practice again. But I think it's really important to understand what we're actually trying to get out of the practices that we are doing. I would love to know your thoughts on all this. Have you ever practiced this form of contemplation or any other form of contemplation before? Let me know in the comments. If you're listening to us on YouTube, Spotify, or CreationsPaths.com, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say you can leave a comment, they don't notify us, so we won't know. But you can leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then head over to CreationsPaths.com, click on chat, and you can leave a message there, and we will see it, and we will be able to get back to you. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars, you can pass our way. We offer monthly and annual memberships. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am CE Dorset on both, and you can support us using the Cash App hashtag CreationsPaths. Thank you to everybody who does that. We are ever so grateful. Thank you so much. You all really do help us keep the lights on, keep a roof over our head, and food on our table. If we've ever said anything that's helped you out, please share it with others. That helps us out more than you know. And as we're heading out today, I want to pray to a kind of a controversial figure who has become one of my little saints that I pray to a lot, and that's Emperor Akbar, who spent much of his time in contemplation and prayer and in seeking truth through calling together great councils of all the religious people in his kingdom, just so that he could practice the way of God. Akbar, who studied all things and sought the deep truths to help govern your people wisely, to win in war, and to bring peace to your land. Help us to ponder the deep things in our lives and to find the path forward that leads to peace when necessary, to war, but always with justice and the benefit of all in our mind. Help us to build a just and peaceful world. Amen.
Amen.